Today, the CRL Commission revealed that 34 initiates had lost their lives during the initiation season in the Eastern Cape. The Commission called on traditional leaders to become more involved in what's going on in their jurisdictions. For more on this, we're now joined by our reporter Linda Mnisi, who has been tracking the story for us. Linda, we heard some really shocking revelations coming out of that briefing, and a number of recommendations were put forward when it comes to ensuring that the rate of death comes down to zero and that illegal schools are essentially shut down.
Yeah, indeed, Paul, and that's what the Commission is calling for the closure of those illegal schools. But you'll remember that they did indicate that initially they knew that the deaths were sitting at around 23 when it was initially reported. Those news, came to their attention through the media when they saw the reports, which prompted an urgent meeting with the provincial leadership of the Eastern Cape, where they sought answers around, the circumstances that led to the deaths of those initiates. As of yesterday, they say that number had risen to about 34. And if we look at the breakdown of those numbers, the Commission says about 12 of those deaths came from the legal schools, while 18 of those came from the illegal schools. So they've laid down a number of recommendations, including, of course, shutting down those illegal schools, but also calling on state security to also be able to identify where these illegal schools are. The reinforcement of the risk adjustment strategy, which will help, of course, the provincial leadership to curb these deaths. I'm joined now by Professor Musoma, who will give us an indication of perhaps where we are when we speak about this issue. Professor, thank you so much for your time. I want you to help us understand the numbers first, because if you put 12 and 18 together, you get 30. And you've basically told us that there's only about 34 that you know about so far.
The numbers that we gave you are the ones that was in the report yesterday. But of course, some of the deaths occurred, which meant the number increased from the number that we had to 34. And some of the deaths must be verified where they come from, either from illegal or illegal schools. And we'll be able to make that analysis upon receipt of the where these deaths occurred at a later stage. But it is important that despite the additional numbers, the numbers that we have are unexceptionally high. For a province that is, of course, characterized in the main with so many deaths that are occurring each season. So the role of the CRL in its oversight responsibility is to ensure that the province accounts, because the protection and promotion of the culture is not a license that the culture must be used as a pretext for criminal activities that takes away the lives of the young people of the province. So that's why, as a commission, we say culture does not kill. Culture is life. And culture's intention is to ensure the development of values, community building, and all of those good Ubuntu values are part of what culture provides. So it is only the living that can enjoy culture, and not the dead.
And I mean, if you look at this situation, I mean, we've been here before. We've seen initiates over the years die. But if you look at specifically 2020, there was about 14, I stand corrected on that figure, there was about 14 of the initiates that died last year. Of course, there was COVID-19, there was the regulations, and which one may argue that those contributed to those figures. Would you say, as the Commission, that the custodians of these practices, I'm talking now about the traditional leadership, dropped the ball here?
Well, it's not only Commission saying it. It is what was reported to us, that some of the traditional leaders just do not know what is happening around them regarding issues of initiation. And some of them, of course, have a problem of tracking these far-flung areas that host these illegal initiation schools, which is why we are calling for the National Security Agency to assist in identifying these culprits and bring them to book. But the issue of accountability is a critical one. Insofar as the customary Initiation Act of 2021 states unequivocally that the buck stops with the traditional leaders because they are overall responsible for initiation school. In other words, no one in a jurisdiction of a traditional leader, king or queen, can open an initiation school without the permission of the king or the queen. So what is actually happening is that the trust deficit that seems to happen in that environment is a situation where even those that are opening schools, the community is not able to alert the king or the queen or the traditional leaders. So you need a community that is built together to safeguard, protect this cultural practice.
What has been, the response of the kings in these affected areas? What are some of the reasons they've given for not being able to spot these illegal schools? Do some of them know about them? What have been their reasons, really?
We have not been able to talk to the traditional leaders as a group. Yesterday, we had a representative of the National House of Traditional Leaders, as well as the Provincial House representatives, who also are making the point that the deaths of young men is unacceptable. And I think it's a firm position they made, which also are supporting the fact that the role of the traditional leaders is upmost important in the fight against illegal schools.
Sorry there, Professor. It's one thing to talk tough on these illegal initiation schools, but also in going through your recommendations, there is nowhere where you speak about, the traditional leaders themselves in terms of consequences. As you rightfully put it, the buck stops with them. It is their responsibility, and therefore, if these deaths are occurring in their areas, then they should face the consequences.
You see, the Act provides that for us. It says you are. In other words, if something goes wrong, you don't go and look for excuses. You don't shift the buck. The buck stops with who? And when we say consequence management and accountability, we are not excluding the kings and the queens because they are overall responsible for the initiation schools. So they are included there. A part of our responsibility is to engage them and make sure, are you aware of your responsibility that the new act has now imposed on you? And if they are aware of it, do you understand the consequences that flows out of that? It is the engagement which is very, very important. Because all of us, and in fact the Act says, they are the custodian of culture. And if you are the custodian of culture, you must do everything in your power to deal with things that destroy and discredit the culture. It is this responsibility.
Let's talk now about how binding these recommendations are. I mean, one can just look at them as, recommendations from your institution, the Chapter 9 institution, but just how binding are they?
They are binding. If anybody is not happy, you have to approach the courts to nullify them. But as they stand, they are binding. We are Chapter 9 institutions. We are empowered to do what we are doing to protect and promote the culture. Yes.
And your engagement with the police in terms of the investigations, how far is that?
We have not done that because this was a first move to make sure that we are all on the same page. Then we'll move into talking to the kings and queens, the police, and all the structures. But some of the structures were there. The police were there yesterday. The police commissioner was there. The NPA were there. We had a high-level representation in this meeting. So what we have recommended is what everybody, I read some of these in summary form for them to understand what is in the recommendation. Okay.
And just lastly, I mean, we know how these initiation schools and the process of just initiation has been treated with a veil of secrecy. How much does this contribute to the deaths that we're seeing? You speak now of kings and queens who are unable to reach certain parts and identify these spots. Does that contribute and make it easy for the perpetrators to set up these illegal camps?
Not quite, because the legislation and the monitors of the legislation and how you get to register a child, the process, and the role of the health department, the role of SAPS, the role of social development is clearly mapped out. In other words, there's what you call the child's consent. There's also parental consent. Now, the illegal schools, they just don't care about those things. Even testing of the child before going to the initiation school, what is a requirement in terms of the law? And the child must be certificated to being fit to undergo the process of initiation. And all of that is not the problem for the illegal schools.
All right, there you have it, Professor Musoma, giving us an indication really of just how bad the situation is when you look at the number of those deaths, giving us, of course, the process also that they've undergone to try and at least get answers. What is clear is that, their stance really is that the illegal initiation schools in Po must be shut down. And as far as this entire initiation process, given the fact that he also indicates that the numbers continue to rise. When they first got the reports, the numbers were sitting around 23, and now they're sitting at around 34. But there is no recommendation that this entire process must be stopped. So at this particular point, it continues. But, of course, police have been called upon to make sure that they bring those who are accountable to book.
Absolutely, and we leave it there for now. Our reporter, Linda Mnisi, getting some reaction from Professor David Musoma when it comes to the latest updates and the recommendations of the CRL in tackling and curbing the number of initiation deaths, especially in the Eastern Cape.